Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Walk. Today is Sunday, July 23rd, and I apologize that the video is coming up a little late. Well, I'm not going to apologize. I'm going to explain to you why it's a little bit late. I did not receive today's message until this morning. In fact, I didn't get it till about an hour ago, and it's now 7 o'clock. So I've been praying and waiting on the Lord to give the message, and usually when it's delayed like that, it's because this next bunch of messages are going to be extremely powerful, and they usually go really far. So what are we talking about next? We're talking about how to recognize a demonic attack, how to recognize whether or not Satan is involved. Is it just you and you're just getting distracted or wandering away? Or is it the influence of a demon? So that's what we're going to be looking at. Today we're in Genesis 3. This is the very first place that Satan starts to interact with human beings. So I'm going to include satanic attacks as with the demonic attacks because Satan is the leader of the demons. He is also a demon. He's the head demon. But I want to keep that all together because they do the same things. The other demons have mimic him and do things the way that he does things. So in Genesis chapter 3, this is where the serpent deceives Eve. And this is what it says. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast on the field that the Lord God had made. So he's got some cunning. He's very good at manipulation. He's very good at thinking outside of the box. He said to the woman, "Did God actually tell you, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die." Now we're going to stop here. This is the very first manipulative move that the serpent makes. You will not surely die. He contradicts what God said. First of all, that's a contradiction. Secondly, he's putting in that doubt in that woman's mind. He's letting Eve know maybe what God said isn't true. Maybe you need to think about it from a different way. He's getting her on that avenue of thinking contrary to what God has taught. For God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Stop and think this one through. There's the temptation. That's the temptation, that there's something to be gained by going contrary to what God said. So there's two things that are happening here. We see that, first of all, Satan is deceiving her. Secondly, he's contradicting what God said. And thirdly, he's saying if you go in the opposite direction from what God has told you to do, there's a benefit. Those are three strategies that demons use. They deceive, they're contrary to what God has said, and thirdly, they try to convince you that there's a benefit to going in the opposite way from what God has told you to do. So as you go into your prayer closet today, and of course we know the rest of the story, we know that the woman eats the fruit, and then the Lord God's walking in the garden and they hide from him. For the very first time, they don't want to be in God's presence. Now that's a fourth piece of evidence. If you no longer want to be in God's presence, and it may be because you're feeling shame, it may be because you find it boring, it may be because there's a lot of ways that you can feel when you don't want to be in God's presence. That's also a hint that a demonic activity has been happening around you. So as you go into your prayer closet, think about those times where, you start to think contrary to what God has thought. God has taught you. Think about those times where you think that there may be an advantage to doing the opposite of what God taught you, and examine that, pray over that. Is it a demonic influence or is it not? And as we continue to go through this series, you're going to understand those demonic influences much more clearly. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and keep walking the walk.